Hey, welcome everybody. My name is Daniel Fehr-Krahn, and we got a handful of us here, and then there's going to be maybe a dozen or so they'll register in the next 5 minutes and jump on the. But I'm glad we can go through, and if you have any questions today, you can unmute or ask me as we go through, and we're going to go through workshop number 5. So there are 6 workshops that we run through, and let me just show you. I'll just walk through, but let me tell you a little bit about myself. Then we'll just jump right into it. And you didn't come here to hear about me, but I'm in my late 30s, and I've been in this campaign since my 20s, and I've been here over a decade. And I like what we do for the consumer. I love our system. I like the idea of building people and working with people and traveling and going to the events. And it's been a blessing to my family. And we're going to go through workshop number 5. Let me share my screen, and you guys can then see what I see. Let me stop share. Let me try again. Stop share. I saw that happen. I want to share this one. There we go. I'm back, but we're going to talk about long-term goals. And so workshop number 5 comes in order of the first workshop is just an overview of general financial principles. And some of those will be covered in this workshop, whether it's how we're saving money and how we're taxed and what that kind of looks like. But workshop 2 is really where it comes into play properly, where we talk about budgeting and having extra money at the end of every month. And so usually we manage our bills on a monthly basis. And so having extra money every month is an issue of spending less than we earn and paying off our debt. So our workshop 2 is about spending less than we earn and paying off our debt and getting in control of our cash flow. And just choosing a lifestyle, we'd say act our wage, where we're choosing a lifestyle that's less than we make. And then the third workshop is about protecting our income, that there are some unforeseen things that are catastrophic to the family unit. And so if someone passes away or gets major cancer or something like that, it's catastrophic. And so we buy insurance, whether it's life insurance or health insurance, and we want to get that at the best price possible. And usually the way you get the best price isn't by shopping around to many carriers, although we do that for the consumer. What it is understanding what you're buying, where in some policies, if you overpay, you build up value, and other ones, if you overpay, you lock in the price. And there's different reasons to overpay for insurance, and there's different reasons to underpay. And so workshop number 3 talks about what you pay and what you get when it comes to insurance. So there's less confusion in the marketplace. Then we went into workshop 4 and started talking about what the stock market looked like and what investing looked like and how to choose different investments. And so by looking at the stock market and long-term, the up and down of looking at the stock market, that it may be a good idea to have some exposure to the stock market, and to also have looking at other things, like we're going to look at a financial foundation today of what else is there. And you don't need to have exposure to the stock market, but you can. And so we're going to look through some long-term goals today. The next workshop, if you catch it tomorrow or if you catch it next week, will be about estate planning. So long-term goals, one day longer than you. That's what workshop 6 is about. But we're going to go through this, and I'm licensed, so we always got to have a disclaimer. That means someone's licensed, and it's not interpreted as accounting, investment, legal, tax advice. It's not an offer to buy anything. It's just to help you understand what we teach. And we believe in what we call a campaign of 30 by 30. And I think this is twofold. One is we want to have 30 million families helped by 2030. But the other piece is we want to have 30 families helped every 30 days. And that is the personal commitment of someone who's campaigning with us. That's the speed of takeoff. So if someone wants to build a career here, we got to help a lot of people. And we want to be a part of the campaign that's revolutionizing the financial industry and build with a system that bridges financial education and financial independence. And why our workshops? Well, there's lots of information out there, and many offer financial advice, but they're not licensed. I am licensed. I'm both securities licensed and life licensed. And many of the industry says, hey, we're going to have a narrow focus, and we're going to just focus on debt, or just focus on budgeting, or just focus on life insurance, or just. And so our workshops are very holistic, not just one or two aspects, but we want to have a total picture, where it's very difficult to average people to hire one person to manage their finances. You can't do that unless you have a lot of money. You can hire a chief financial officer of a company, but I don't have a chief financial. I have to be the chief financial officer of my company, so I need a holistic education of what's out there. So when we talk about control your finances and control your future, this is what we look at. When you look at a financial plan, here's one way to write a financial plan out on one page. Not a paragraph, it's just if you draw 4 rectangles of saying, what kind of protection do you have if somebody dies, if somebody gets cancer, heart attack, major illness, disabled at work, toothache, crash your car, house burns down, all that stuff can be covered with proper protection. And debt management, how much do you owe? How much do you pay? When is it going to be paid off? That's what we want to know. And it's very simple numbers that you can just calculate in your head. How much do I owe? How much do I pay? And when will it be paid off? The emergency fund is, how much money do I have available? And how much money am I adding to this? An investment is, what have I invested? And how much am I investing every month or withdrawing from my investment? And then how is that investment taxed? And so how much money is getting pulled out of that said investment? And so when we're investing, it's usually long-term, but emergency fund and debt management are very short-term. And the protection can be long-term, short-term. You can choose how you want to pay for it. But today we're going to talk about the investment world. I assume if you haven't been to the other workshops, this workshop still works. It still helps you understand, hey, what are we investing for? And so the government in Canada says, if you earn money, you got to pay tax. And then what they say is, except for different things, they're going to help in some areas and tax you in other areas. And so we want to talk about the tax today. And how does the taxes work? That's one of the topics we're going to talk about. And so the 2 main things people save for is higher education, where they want to pay to earn more money. So maybe I go to school. I went to university, actually. It didn't work out very well for me. I graduated with a degree that I found out I got a degree in philosophy and theology, and it did not help me earn income. Some degrees are investments and some degrees are garbage. And I ended up with a garbage one. It would, maybe I got a degree in engineering or something like that. It might have worked, but for me, it didn't. And, but we're going to look at the cost of what it looks like to send a child to school and the saving side of things versus the student loan side of things. And then we're going to look at options for retirement, of what those look like for the average people. So the 2 biggest goals are college and retirement. I prefer to get your retirement savings first. And then once that's in place, do the college funding second, because you can't finance retirement, but you could finance college or university. But we're going to talk about university first, because most are going to experience that before retirement. One of the main questions before we look at the financial literacy side of things is, do we want to assume all the responsibility? So do we want to pay for their education? Do we want to give them 10 grand and tell them to figure it out? What does it look like if we're going to help somebody with their situation? And so if you don't know, do I want to cover 50%, 100%? How much do you want to contribute? And, I've met someone yesterday, actually, they were saving $50 a month. And so is that enough? Does $50 a month change someone's life? And then we look at, where do we save? What's available? And does it fit into an overall strategy? What if the kids don't go to school? Do I waste my money? How does this look? So it costs about $20,000 extra a year to raise a child, maybe $25,000, which sounds like a lot of money. And you're like, how could that be? But, for example, I have 2 children and I have a spouse that stays home. So then she's not working for those years. So it might not just be a cost of I'm spending $2,000, but it might be, hey, the blessing of having children comes with my wife not working, because she's going to be raising those kids. Or it might come with medical bills or different things. But it costs money to have children. And we all make a lot of money. If we make 50, 100,000 a year, there's lots of money coming in. We're going to look at, how about sending your child to university? What does this cost? So the average 4-year tuition is about $50,000. So about $10,000 per, maybe $12,000 per year. Let's call it $1,000 a month. Now, if you don't live at home, it's maybe $2,000 a month. And in 18 years, after some inflation, we might be looking at $65,000 of a cost to get a 4-year degree. Now, if I don't save the money, the other option is to borrow the money. So either save it or borrow it, or my kids borrow it. And so right now, the average student graduates with $27,000 in student loans. So they pay for some and they borrow some other. But this is what it looks like with inflation, that if I start at $48,000, add a little bit every year, what happens is it costs more money in the future than I thought. So it's hard to actually plan it out. Hey, how much is it really going to cost? It's different. It's different for everybody, really. And so we're going to look at, there's 3 ways that we can fund education: your personal savings, your grants and loans, and so your personal savings, grants, or loans. It says, and you shouldn't touch your retirement savings. So retirement savings, hopefully you start that in your 20s and you get some compounding going, and you put $100, $200, $300 away in your 20s, or $400 or $500 away in your 30s or 40s. But you shouldn't touch your retirement savings. And we want to look at if you withdraw $50,000 from your retirement savings, you might have to start retirement. You might have to retire, 10 or 20 years later. So we're going to look at some of these options. And one of them here is what it looks like to save $100 a month or $50 a month. If you have 18 years to save for school that costs $65,000, you need to save, depending on the interest rate, if you earn a 5% interest rate, which is maybe very reasonable for an average balance fund, about $190 a month. And if you have a 8% interest rate, $140 a month. You don't always know the interest rate if you're investing into something like the stock market or the economy, but we can look at things and say, how much should I invest? Now, if someone puts away $140 a month and they get an 8% return, they could basically fully fund the kids' education. Now, it's a funny thing where we say, well, where is someone going to get that money from? One of the places we get this money from and is kids, they have a child tax credit. So the government, if you have a child and you have a lower income, the government gives you a child tax credit. So we use that a lot of times in planning to save for the kids' education. And we say, are you getting the most of where you're investing? So one of the areas that you can save for a child's education, if you're going to put money in a mutual fund or a professionally managed portfolio, is what's called an RESP. The RESP gives us a Canada Education Savings Grant, and they match 20% of your contribution. And you can make $2,500. So if you put in $2,500, they'll put in $500. If you put in $200 a month, they'll put in an extra $40. And you could get additional government, an extra 20%, depending on your income. And if the RESP is not used to go to university or an approved institution, the grants are reversed. So it's a funny thing. I get grants to go to school, but I don't get to keep those as a parent. My son would get those if he goes to school. And so when you look at the RESP, some of the rules is earnings and withdrawals to pay for university are not taxed if I buy it. They're not taxed on the original capital I put in, but any earnings or grants are taxed in the child's name. So I get a 20% boost up front, but then my child is going to have to pay tax on the growth. So sometimes if I'm investing aggressively, maybe I don't want to pay tax on the growth. maybe TFSA is also a good option for saving for kids' education. But the donor does stay in control because the TFSA has limits as well. I don't get a tax deduction for this program, and early withdrawals for any reason is allowed, but you're going to have to pay tax. So the money is liquid, but there is tax if the in the owner's name. But so we want to look at the tax on this, and I think if someone's saving I think it matters less where someone saves and more that they do save. And with any plan, you want to be sure to understand the restrictions and how it fits into a whole strategy. That I think what people should be looking for when they buy an RESP is their debt under control, and how they're saving for other things as well, maybe buy the next car, different things. But so the Canada Student Financial Assistance Program says you can get some grants, and you can apply from grants that you don't have to repay, or you can get loans which start repaying after school. So there's different ways you can fund school, and going through the government or getting different loans through Government of Canada. But if their children plan on going to university, this is one way that they can figure out how to get that paid for. And if you go through a grant program, they're going to look at your province, your family income, if you have dependents, your tuition fees, your living expenses. If you have a disability, you might get a little bit more. And very few people look at what they could get when it comes to going to school. It's if you go to canada.ca, you can look it up and put your stuff into a calculator. And looking at going to school, sometimes you just want to be prepared of what are the tuition costs. I have a client, their child wants to become a doctor. And so we looked at tuition costs, and over like a 10-year period, it's a couple $100,000. And so they said, oh, that's a serious decision. And then how do the taxes work on some of these savings? And you want to look at some of this stuff and make sure you're prepared. As we don't want to go through all the details today, but if you're planning on going to university and you're going to put $100 a month or $200 or $300 a month away, you should get into the details. If we have an emergency fund, debts are paid, university is paid for, and the kids have grown up, now we're ready to save for retirement. So we want to look at retirement. Has been traditionally a three-legged stool, which means I got personal savings, I got a company pension, and a government benefit. Now, nowadays, the personal savings portion is something we got to save for or build a company that can pay us some passive income. Company pensions, some are there, some aren't. Less and less are there if you switch jobs. And then the government benefit seems very predictable currently. It's actually the most predictable of the other two. So there's three main government benefits: old age security, we call OAS, Canada Pension Plan, which we call CPP, and guaranteed income supplement, which is called GIS. Now, let me just do a quick summary, and then we're going to go through the slides. OAS looks very much like the American Social Security. Canada Pension Plan looks very much like a Norwegian pension plan, where it's funded by us. We pay into the CPP, they take our money and invest it, and it is something long-term that grows. And the guaranteed income supplement is meant for people with a lower income. Someone said my voice is cutting. I hope it's okay. Should be okay, I hope. But old age security, let's go through this. You get this if you're 65 years or older. And as of 2022, you get about $650 a month. Your employment history is not a factor, so you get the benefit even if you've never worked. But if you make too much money, you get a clawback. And so old age security comes in just based on your age. And you've been a Canadian, you've been living in Canada. Canada Pension Plan is what we pay into. And so Canada Pension Plan has a lot more flexibility of when you start getting paid. Contributions are made by the employee and the employer. So the employee pays almost 5% and the employer pays 5%, just under. But in 2022, it's 5.7. And so your benefits, an average is about $779. The max is about $1,253. that depends if you retire at age 65. Now, if you wait to get your amount, you get a little bit more. If you take early, you get a little bit less. So let's add this up. If you're married, it's easier to retire if you're married because there's two people. And so you have CPP is maybe $800. Then you have OAS, which is $650. So now you're around $1,400. And if you're married, now you're on $2,800. And both CPP and OAS are both taxable. So depending on your other income, that could affect some of your taxableness. Notice here, the survivor pension is $467. That means if my income is $779 and I pass away, my wife will usually get 60% of my pension up to the maximum amount. So if I'm already getting the maximum and my wife passes away, I don't get 60% of hers. They max out on either. So if someone doesn't work, they're likely going to get my pension. But if I work hard my whole life and have a good income, my wife's likely not going to get mine. And so the Canada Pension Plan is depends on age, where at 65, you may get a full pension, but you're going to get 7.2% less each year if you take it early and more if you take it longer. So basically you get 36% less at age 60 or 42% more at age 70. A lot of it depends on, do you need that income? Does that income need to come in for you? And if you need the income, sometimes you got to wait to get more income. But if you take it early, you actually get it for longer. So do you want more income starting at age 70 or do you want less income starting at age 60? The GIS is one that I think is less talked about, less well known. And it does a monthly non-taxable benefit to lower OAS recipients. So if you get OAS is not included in the calculation. So if I get CPP of $700 and an OAS of $650, my income is 700 times 12, which is about 8,400. So if my income is 8,400, not including OAS, I will get my GIS. And the maximum you can get in GIS is about $900, and the minimum is $0. So if I have a lot of RRSP income or employment income, I'll probably not get GIS. But those who don't own RRSPs and just get the CPP typically get a GIS top up. So no one plans on being poor, but we look at, hey, maybe if I structure my income in such a way, I'll get this benefit on top of it. And so will it be enough? So what am I expected to receive? You can go to the government website, canada.ca, and you can check what your benefits should be. And will it provide enough for you? Hey, unfortunately, with rising costs, inflation, the cost of living going up, over time, our cost of living should go down. So what I mean by that is I was able to pay off a car. I was able to pay off my home almost. That's going to come in the next, within the decade. I was able to pay things on time, pay my bills annually instead of monthly. And so I'm able to spend less money for ridiculous things. But the inflation goes up, but I get more control of my spending as I get older. And we want to look at how much money you need to retire, and do you need more than the government? I think I do. I don't want to live on $1,000 a month. I don't think that's reasonable. And so let's see what investment vehicles are available to help us work towards our needs. So we can look at, if you have a job, there's two types of pensions out there. One is a defined benefit plan, and the other one is a defined contribution plan. So defined benefit means you know what you're going to get, but you don't know how much it's going to cost. So the employer pays in, you don't know how much they put in. It's very costly, but you get a defined amount. And you're going to get, typically, you know when you retire, how much you're going to get. And these are less and less and less common. A defined contribution plan, you know what you're going to put in. So let's say your employer says we're going to put in 5 or 10% of your income, or we're going to match a program. You know what goes in, and then the amount is defined by your investment performance. Investment responsibility and fees are on the employee. So you're going to look at, hey, what are you actually looking at? And you have control over what you invest in. So if you're investing long-term in a contribution plan, you get to choose a long-term investment. Usually we want to be fully exposed to the stock market if emotionally you're ready for that. Sometimes you're afraid of any up and down. So you add bonds, you add fixed income, and you make it a little smoother investment returns. But you get to choose how it's invested, and you should match the investment with how long you have to invest. All retirement plans are not created equal. So you want to know what you have, and you have to know what you pay in, and you can calculate, is that enough? When calculating our retirement income, let me see if I can just annotate a little bit here. What happens is we have different types of bills. So if I'm drawing a retirement plan, I say, okay, I have something like a fixed bill. This one's going to come in no matter what. I'm going to draw an F. And then I got variable bills. So my variable bills is like food. The price changes every month. I shop a lot. I shop a little bit, but I got to have price of my fuel, things that aren't, I don't like have an automatic withdrawal. And then on top of that, I have discretionary spending, which is like wasting money, or really going on vacation or stuff I don't have to do. I have to buy food, but it's a variable bill. And what I want to do is I want to build my retirement plan to say, I want to have a fixed income on the bottom of maybe government is going to cover my fixed costs. So I want to have a fixed cost, and that's going to pay this. So I know that stuff is paid. And then I want to have a second layer that says, I might have a variable income, maybe drawing from RRSPs, drawing from other things. And then I want to have discretionary. So I have different layers of retirement, just like I have different layers of expenses. So my discretionary income, typically when I look at taxes, is a TFSA. So if I pull an extra 20,000 out of my TFSA, there's no tax. But if I pull 20,000 out of my RRSP, I'm going to get taxed. So if the discretionary goes up and down, anything that's over this tax threshold, I want to pull from a non-taxed source. So I don't get taxed into oblivion as I'm planning my future. But we're going to look at defined pension plan. They're very fixed income, and the employer bears the responsibility. But when it comes to personal savings, you get to choose how you're taxed. Different ways how we can structure it. And by the way, the number one failure when it comes to personal savings is people don't do it. It's not where they put it. If you're just saving cash, which professionally is maybe not the greatest asset, but if you're just saving cash, you're better than the guy not saving cash. So just having money is a good position. But one thing we use a lot of is called a mutual fund. And a mutual fund is an investment vehicle where a pool of money is invested into a portfolio of various assets by a fund manager. Basically, an investor can purchase shares of a fund where a lot of people pool together and they use professional management. The content and risk of the portfolio is based on the fund objectives. So a lot of times they look at maybe an index, which is a general stock market, and they want to be less risky than the index or better performing or more Canadian or different objectives. They can maybe be a little more unique. And hey, mutual funds, I think everyone should own a mutual fund. It's very low to buy it. $50 or $100 a month can get you into a mutual fund, and you can get in and out of the investment with relative ease. It takes maybe a week to sell it, unless there's more paperwork. If it's an RESP or maybe a more complicated with a LIRA or LIF from a company, it's maybe more complicated, but generally very easy. It's always diversified by law. So they have to spread out risk over many asset categories to help minimize losses and use professional money managers to select and monitor the performance. And so mutual funds have fees, they cost money, and almost anything you buy does cost money, although you might not pay for it directly. But they're going to explain in something called a prospectus, or a fund facts is a summarized prospectus. And I don't think I have nothing against fees. In fact, I have mutual funds, I pay a fee, and I think there's something value to say, I want to get something I pay for. And I think there's a lot of talk in your industry of the fee is the most important. actually the future performance is the most important, but we don't know what the future performance will be. So we talk about fee. As long as I get something for my fee, I'm okay paying a fee. But I don't want to pay a fee and not get good performance. That doesn't make sense to me. So I want to get good performance for my fee. In a segregated fund, what they do is they offer something more than just performance. They offer a guarantee. They say, hey, we're going to guarantee up to 100% of whatever you put in principal. And then a death benefit guarantee is they're going to say, I'm going to guarantee that if you pass away, whatever you put in, we're going to put to your family. There's creditor protection if someone gets sued or a business goes bankrupt. There's potential creditor protection. It says potential because it sometimes depends when you put the money in and how it's registered. And then it bypasses probate, which is the process of taking a will to the court and getting it stamped probate. And it's an administrative cost more than a probate cost. Probate in Manitoba is 0%. So it doesn't cost money in Manitoba to probate. But the administrative costs. Sometimes the disadvantage is the segregated fund is a mutual fund sold by an insurance company. And they say, hey, if it's a maturity guarantee at 15 years, you got to wait 15 years to exercise that guarantee. And there may be an additional fee for the insurance benefit. So if someone's young, they don't have to buy the insurance benefit. They don't have to do 100%. They can just do like what's called a 75% guarantee. There's very little fee. But if you want a better guarantee, sometimes costs more money. And annuity is as you live longer, there's a need for long-term solution. So basically a pension is an annuity. In the insurance industry, we call it an annuity. And in the investment industry, we call it a pension. But you give a large lump sum of money in exchange for a series of payments. And you get a very consistent payment, and the monthly check is determined by the size of your account, the interest rates, and your life expectancy. And so you think about it as your own personal pension. But an investment account is a segregated fund. They call it an investment account. What they do is they strip out all the guarantees. So you get the death benefit guarantee of a seg fund, but not the maturity guarantee. So you could do this in a TFSA, RSP, LIRA, all the different accounts. You got a death benefit guarantee on principal, and it doesn't cost anything extra. So different when someone says segregated funds are expensive, which one? Some are not. Mutual funds are expensive. Some are not. Not knowing what you're doing is expensive. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you're unlucky. So expensive is maybe relative, but can segregated funds and investment accounts enhance my financial strategy? And we look at maybe these are a little bit extra when it comes to savings plans, when it comes to where we're putting our money, but a registered disability savings plan. If you know anyone that has a disability, which is they have a disability tax credit, they can put money into a program and the government will give you 300% what they put in right away. So if they put in $100, the government will put in $300. If they put in $300, the government will put in $900. And they'll triple what you put in right away. And you can invest this in a mutual fund and really build your net worth quite fast. And the RRSP is the most popular investment plan. The main thing to know about an RSP is you get a tax deduction when you put money in, and it's tax deferred, but the investment earnings and your contribution are taxed when you withdraw. So you get some tax break when you put it in, but you get a tax hit when you pull the money out. And there's a limit to how much you can put in. But you ask, is our RSP working hard? We get to choose how our RRSP is invested. Now we can leave it in our RRSP and move it around to make sure it's invested well and make sure we're getting good advice from our advisors. Sometimes I meet people, I met someone recently where they have a good investment, but they don't get any good advice. So I say, hey, why don't we keep the investment and move it over to me? And you don't have to pay tax when you move an RRSP, but you do pay tax if you want to spend it. The tax-free savings account is the opposite of a RRSP. It grows tax deferred, but there's no tax break when you put it in, and there's zero tax when you pull it out. So if I'm investing for retirement, I can use a TFSA and I'll still get my GIS. So I can look at different things, or if I got to pull a lump sum out for whatever reason, I can do that, and I don't have to pay tax on it. But non-registered, if there's RRSP on one side and TFSA on the other side, RRSP is in the middle, which means depending how you earn income is how you pay tax. So there's three main ways you earn income in a non-registered investment. One is a dividend income, another is interest income, or capital gains. Capital gains is considered income and triggered when you sell the investment. Dividend is when it's paid out, and interest is when it's paid out. So non-registered investments, one of the best forms of non-registered is dividend funds, because the dividend has the best tax treatment. And but if you use an income fund, it's the worst tax treatment. So non-registered, it's not just the performance, but we also have the tax we want to look at. And there's no contribution limit. So a lot of people with big money have non-registered money. And when you put your money anywhere, if you may have a job and you make money, you're going to have to pay some tax. And when you spend money, there's some tax too. And if you save money, there's some tax. And if you pass away, maybe you pay tax too. So tax is something that we have to discuss, and we have to consider, hey, what are we going to pay in tax? And the wealth formula says we take money, add time to that, so the younger the better, and a rate of return, and it equals wealth. Add some time to that. But the three buckets of tax are tax now, which is usually employment income is the number one tax now, or non-registered investments that are kicking off income. But you also have checking, savings. Usually they don't produce enough income to get taxed. Tax later is things that will be taxed in your future and count against your GIS. And so the bigger your income, the more tax you might pay. And then tax advantages, there's three main ones in Canada, actually four. Let me tell you about the fourth. The TFSA, you don't pay tax when you pull the money out. Life insurance benefit is no tax. And your primary residence is no tax. Now, you can always mess those up if you day trade inside a TFSA, or you don't do your life insurance properly, or your primary residence, you rent out your basement and you claim rent as income and stuff like that. But there's also one, I believe it's called something like first home buyer plan, or first home savings plan, or I think FHSP, something like that, first home savings plan. So there's a maximum of $8,000 you can put in per year, and that grows if you open the account. So if I put $100 in this year, the next year my maximum is $8,000 or 16. So you get $8,000 of room that grows if you open an account. So I recommend people open an account in 2023. And then you get it when you put money into a first home savings plan, you get a tax deduction for anything you put in. And when you pull that money out to put a down payment on a house, you don't pay any tax. So it encourages people, the bigger the down payment, the more the tax savings. And the bigger the down payment, the more stable our financial system. And it allows people to get into a home without paying tax. Thank you. Someone says first home savings account. The Equitable will have it on their lineup probably in July or August. They've announced that. And so on a life license and the securities license, they'll be able to pick that up. But you want to look at the different ways that you're going to get taxed. And so if someone doesn't own a home, you could save for a down payment in a TFSA, but you don't get a tax deduction. But if you use a first home savings account, you get the tax deduction and don't pay tax later. And there's a 15-year maximum, and there's always a bunch of fine print. But the main thing about a first home savings account is that you get a tax deduction on the way in. And if you use it for a down payment, no tax. And you can, I believe you can roll RRSP money over to a first home savings account, no tax implications, no deduction. And then you can use it for a down payment. And you do not have to pay that money back. It's not a home buyer RRSP loan. So it's very, very, very slick program coming out in Canada. Let's summarize this stuff up here, where there's different buckets you can put in your money. So in RRSP, one of the main things to look at is you get a tax deduction, and it's taxed as income when you get older, when you pull it out. Non-registered, no tax deduction going in, and a corporation can buy it. So if someone has money in a corporation, you have a small business tax rate, which is around 12%. So if I earn $100,000 in a company, I pay 12,000 tax. Now I'm left with 78,000 or 88,000. I can take that money and invest it in non-registered money, but I can't take it and invest it in an RRSP TFSA because a corporation cannot buy an RRSP or TFSA. I have to pull it out as income, pay the tax, and then put it in one of these registrations. TFSA, no tax deduction on the way in, but when you withdraw it, it's tax-free and a corporation cannot own it. And then life insurance, there's typically no tax deduction on the way in. But when you withdraw it, you can do it in such a way you don't pay tax. If you do a collateral loan or the policy loan is less than the cash value is less than the adjusted cost basis. So early on the policy, there's no tax. And one of the main things here is an individual or corporation can own it. One of the things that's very confusing sometimes with non-registered or with life insurance, which is really considered non-registered, except it's kind of in a unique class. Why would you want to borrow against something? Well, one of the main reasons is you get to keep it. So, for example, if I buy something over here and it's going to grow over my whole lifetime, like a home, I don't want to sell pieces of my home when I need money. I don't want to sell my bedroom and sell my kitchen and try to sell it off. And then when I get old, I've sold all my house. You can just borrow against your home and pay it off, borrow against your home and pay it off. And you can do different things like that where I don't lose my asset. So our tax code says if I withdraw money from an RRSP, I have to sell my account. That triggers capital gains tax. But if I borrow against my investments, a lot of times you can do 60% of open investments. I don't trigger tax. So if I need money, I can do it without triggering tax. Or in a life insurance policy, if I sell my policy, it will trigger tax if there's growth in the policy. But if I borrow it out, no tax. A policy loan is taxable if there's growth above the ACB, but a collateral loan is no tax. Now, one of the unique rules of insurance is I think most people don't need money to spend on junk. They need money to refinance. So what I find is if someone has a hard time getting a loan, it's because they don't have any money. So if someone has, let's say, $50,000 in a whole life policy, they can take that money out. If they put it in over a long time, they can take that money out, pay off a bunch of consumer debts, redo their mortgage, and then take that $50,000 and put it back in the whole life. Now, it doesn't matter the growth because when you put money back into an insurance policy, it's tax deductible if there was tax paid early. So in January, if I pull money out of a policy, and in December, I put that money back, there's no tax triggered because it's within the same calendar year. They look at the end of the year if you pulled money out. And so you can access your money, do the things you need to do, and put it back. It might work flipping a house or just needing money. And it's nice to have money when you need money. But if I had $1 million, where would I want my money? Where I would not want my money is maybe an RRSP. But one of the main reasons why you put your money in RRSP is that your company that you work with matches you. And we sell that kind of program, a group retirement program. We can do group RRSP. You can also do group TFSA. Now I have both of them in place with clients of mine. I do group TFSA. I explain, here's how RRSP works, here's how TFSA work. Why don't we let all your employees have a choice and they send me all the business? So I like that idea. But in summer, when you look at some of the choices we look at, hey, if there's a higher education that your kids plan on going to school, maybe you want to save for that. And you might want to save in different areas. The RRSP is good. Sorry, the RESP is good. TFSA is good. Sometimes it might be better if your kids are very young, save for a home, buy a home, and then use some of the equity to pay for the kids' school. So there's different ways to fund it. And you just want to look at what works for you. By the way, being confused doesn't work for you. It works so you understand what you're doing. And when you look at retirement, how much is the government going to pay us? I think that's very predictable. Our CPP is rock solid. Our OAS, a lot of old people vote, so it's going to be hard to change that. Instead of the government reducing benefits, my opinion is the government's just going to increase the cost of younger people paying into these programs, maybe increase taxes. But what's your strategy to get there? And for taking distribution and when you take your money from, But you want to look at, hey, are you getting the most out of everything? Always be learning and understanding and constant reevaluating what you're doing with someone you trust. And one of the greatest miracles is you can change your life by changing the way you think. And maybe if you look at you're not saving as much as you could, and you have two options. They're actually the same option, is change your lifestyle. Change your lifestyle means you either spend less money or you earn more money. I'm happy if you do both. But we have an opportunity for people to earn more money if they want to help serve the average person out there, or even the people that do very well. Or maybe you want to change your lifestyle and change something where it saves you a lot of money. But lifestyle usually helps us earn money, and lifestyle usually helps us spend money. But we want you to understand all of your options and make the best decision you can going forward. But we finished here at we got about 25 people here, and a couple people asked me a question on Zoom about getting access to things. I have if you have any questions, we got a few minutes to answer those questions, and I'm just typing in the chat here. I have a review page on Google. If you want to send me a review, that would be a blessing. If you want to review me, but if you have any questions, basic questions, if it's about your specific situation, I not that I can't answer it, I refuse to answer because I don't really know the whole situation. But any questions before we take off? Anything that needs some clarification? I think we're good. No questions. Either we all get it or we don't get it. So, hey, my name is Daniel Fehr-Krahn, and thank you for coming out.